in the summer of 1837, while the world witnessed the end of one era and the dawn of another with the death of England's King William IV and the ascension of Queen Victoria. A far different drama was playing out in the vast, rugged plains of North America. Here, under the infinite expanse of the prairie sky, a story of youthful ambition, cultural clash, and a devastating loss was unfolding. A story that would become etched into the annals of Native American history. This tale centers on the Cheyenne Bowstring Society, a group of determined young warriors whose quest for glory and wealth led them into one of the most tragic confrontations in the history of the Plains tribes. Their story is not merely one of battle and loss, but also a window into the spiritual beliefs, societal structures, and human emotions that defined life on the plains. The Cheyenne were one of the most prominent tribes of the Great Plains, known for their fierce warriors, rich traditions, and deep spirituality. Within their society, warrior societies played a pivotal role. These groups were not only military units, but also vital cultural institutions that upheld the laws of the tribe, organized communal hunts, and led defensive efforts against enemies. The Bowstring Society was among the most prestigious of these groups. To be a member was to hold a position of respect and responsibility, symbolizing bravery and selflessness. For the young men of the Bowstring Society, the path to adulthood was marked by feats of courage, raids, battles, and acts of heroism that demonstrated their readiness to protect their people and earn a place of honor. For Plains tribes, wealth was measured not in coins or currency, but in horses. A warrior's status and ability to support his family were directly tied to the number of horses he owned. Thus, horse raids were both an economic necessity and a rite of passage. The more daring the raid, the greater the spoils and the higher the esteem. It was this pursuit of wealth and recognition that drove the young warriors of the Bowstring Society to embark on a fateful journey, one that would test not only their courage, but also the very fabric of their cultural and spiritual beliefs. The Cheyenne, like many indigenous peoples, had a deeply spiritual worldview. Their lives were governed by sacred traditions, rituals, and symbols that connected them to the natural and supernatural worlds. Among the most revered symbols in Cheyenne culture were the sacred arrows, which embodied the tribe's spiritual power and unity. These arrows were entrusted to a keeper, who was responsible for safeguarding their sanctity and interpreting the will of the Great Spirit. In 1837, the keeper of the arrows was White Thunder, a 70-year-old elder and medicine man known for his wisdom and unwavering commitment to tradition. When the young warriors of the Bowstring Society announced their intention to raid a Kiowa camp, White Thunder intervened. He reminded them of a sacred rule: no raid could be undertaken while the tribe was under the shadow of an unresolved murder. According to Cheyenne belief, the spirit of the murdered individual needed to be appeased, and the community needed to be cleansed through a ceremonial purification. White Thunder had not yet received the necessary signs from the Great Spirit to perform this ceremony. To proceed with the raid without this ritual, he warned, would bring disaster. For the young warriors, White Thunder's caution was an unwelcome obstacle. They were restless, eager to prove themselves and secure the wealth and status that would elevate their positions within the tribe. Frustration gave way to anger, and in an act of shocking defiance, they physically assaulted the elderly keeper, beating him with their quirts until he reluctantly agreed to perform the cleansing ceremony. This act of violence against a spiritual leader was not only a personal affront, but also a profound violation of Cheyenne cultural norms. It marked a turning point, highlighting the tension between the wisdom of tradition and the impetuousness of youth. White Thunder, humiliated and wounded, conducted the ceremony, but he issued a dire warning. The forced ritual would lack the spiritual efficacy to protect them. The decision to coerce White Thunder reflects a broader theme in human history: the recklessness of ambition and the consequences of disregarding the counsel of experience. For the Bowstring warriors, their desire for glory blinded them to the spiritual and communal implications of their actions. Undeterred by White Thunder's warning, the Bowstring Society sought to bolster their ranks by recruiting warriors from the neighboring Arapaho tribe. The Cheyenne and Arapaho shared a long-standing alliance, and joint raids were a common practice. However, when the Cheyenne approached the Arapaho, They were met with an unexpected response. The Arapaho were in the midst of their sundance, a sacred ceremony involving fasting, dancing, and spiritual visions. During this time, their medicine men had experienced troubling visions of destruction for any warriors who undertook a raid. The Arapaho leaders declined to join the Cheyenne, urging them to heed the warnings and abandon their plans. For the bowstring warriors, this refusal was yet another frustrating roadblock. They dismissed the Arapaho's visions as superstition and cowardice, interpreting their allies' reluctance as a lack of bravery. This decision to ignore both White Thunder's counsel and the Arapaho's set the stage for the tragic events to come. Despite these setbacks, the bowstring warriors pressed on. In the dead of night, 38 members of the Bowstring Society and for contraries, a smaller Cheyenne warrior society known for their unconventional behavior, slipped out of their camp near the headwaters of the Arkansas River. Their destination lay deep in Kiowa territory, in what is now the Texas Panhandle. The journey was grueling, the terrain was harsh, the weather unforgiving and food scarce. What began as a bold adventure soon became a test of endurance. Hunger and fatigue took their toll, and the young warriors began to question the wisdom of their endeavor. Yet pride and determination kept them moving forward. To return home empty-handed would be a humiliation they could not bear. By the time the raiding party reached the vicinity of the Kiowa camp, they were physically and emotionally depleted. Still, they were determined to carry out their plan. 2 scouts were sent ahead to assess the situation, but fate intervened in the form of a young Kiowa boy. The boy had wandered from the camp in search of branches for arrow shafts. When he encountered the Cheyenne scouts, he initially mistook them for returning Kiowa hunters and greeted them warmly. The Cheyenne, however, saw him as a threat. They responded with arrows, but their shots missed and the boy escaped. Sprinting back to the camp to raise the alarm, this chance meeting turned the tide against the Cheyenne. The element of surprise, their greatest advantage, was lost. The Kiowa, along with their Comanche and Lipan Apache allies, quickly mobilized for battle. Realizing they were outnumbered and the Cheyenne retreated to a nearby ravine. Here they hastily constructed makeshift defenses, piling rocks into low walls and draping buffalo hides over them for cover. Exhausted and low on supplies, they prepared for a desperate stand. As the Kiowa and their allies approached, there was a moment of tense uncertainty. The Kiowa, unsure of who they were pursuing, called out to the intruders, demanding they identify themselves. For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then the Cheyenne revealed themselves with war cries and songs pounding their chests and daring their enemies to attack. This act of defiance, even in the face of certain death, was a testament to the warriors' courage and pride. They were determined to fight to the end, upholding the honor of the Bowstring Society. The battle that followed was brutal and chaotic. The Cheyenne, low on arrows, fought valiantly but were hopelessly outnumbered. When their ammunition ran out, they resorted to hand-to-hand combat, wielding knives and tomahawks with ferocious determination. The Comanche and Lipan Apache pressed their advantage, surrounding the ravine and overwhelming the defenders. One by one, the Cheyenne warriors fell. Despite their bravery, they could not withstand the sheer numbers and firepower of their opponents. When the dust settled, all 42 members of the raiding party lay dead in the ravine. The victorious Comanche and Lipan Apache scalped the fallen warriors and arranged their bodies along the makeshift defenses as a warning to future raiders. It was a chilling display of triumph, and a stark reminder of the harsh realities of plains warfare. Years later, a Kiowa warrior named Stumbling Bear, who had participated in the battle, visited the site and reported that the skeletons of the Cheyenne still lay where they had fallen, a haunting testament to their final stand. News of the massacre eventually reached the Cheyenne village, delivered by an Arapaho trader who had overheard the Kiowa's account. The loss plunged the Cheyenne into deep mourning. Sons, brothers, fathers, and husbands were gone, their lives cut short in a tragic display of youthful ambition and defiance. Grief soon gave way to anger, and the Cheyenne vowed to avenge their fallen warriors. This vow would culminate in a fierce battle. A year later, a confrontation that would have lasting repercussions for the Plains tribes. The story of the Bowstring Society is a poignant reminder of the complexities of human nature. It speaks to the universal themes of ambition, defiance, and the consequences of ignoring wisdom. It also highlights the profound spirituality and resilience of the Plains tribes, who found ways to endure, even in the face of devastating loss. In the end, the massacre of the Bowstring Society was not just a tragedy for the Cheyenne, but also a chapter in the larger story of the Plains. A story of courage, conflict, and the unbreakable bond between people and their land.